Alex Padilla challenges. John Kennedy on live TV. What Kennedy says next silences the room. The air in Washington was thick with the hum of anticipation, a city perpetually on the edge of its next scandal or spectacle. Senator Alex Padilla, a man known for his fiery rhetoric and unyielding commitment to his constituents, found himself at the center of an unexpected storm. It began at a public event, a routine press conference held by a federal official in a sleek government building, its glass facade reflecting the overcast sky. The official, a high-ranking member of the Department of Homeland Security, was addressing a crowd of journalists and onlookers about new policy initiatives. Padilla, never one to shy away from a fight, had arrived with a purpose. He believed the official's policies were misguided, and he intended to confront her directly, armed with questions he felt the public deserved answers to. His presence was not scheduled, his name absent from the guest list, but Padilla was undeterred. He strode into the room, his suit crisp, his expression resolute, and positioned himself near the front, ready to interject. The room buzzed as Padilla raised his hand, his voice cutting through the official's prepared remarks like a blade. "Excuse me," he began, his tone sharp but controlled, "but the American people need clarity on these measures. How do you justify the impact on our communities?" The official paused, her eyes narrowing, but before she could respond, security personnel materialized from the edges of the room. They moved swiftly, their faces impassive, trained to neutralize disruptions. "Senator, this is a restricted event," one of them said firmly, placing a hand on Padilla's arm. He pulled back, indignant. "I'm a United States Senator," he protested, his voice rising. "I have every right to be here." The crowd murmured, phones already out, capturing every second of the escalating scene. The security team, unmoved by his title, closed in, guiding him toward the exit, with practiced efficiency. Padilla resisted, not physically, but with words, his frustration spilling over. "This is about accountability," he shouted as he was ushered out, his words echoing in the now silent room. By the time Padilla reached the street outside, the damage was done. The incident, brief but explosive, had been recorded from multiple angles, and the footage spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Clips of the senator's confrontation, his raised voice, and the moment he was escorted out looped endlessly on news feeds, each view amplifying the public's reaction. Some praised his boldness, calling him a champion for transparency. Others mocked his audacity, labeling the stunt reckless and self-serving. Hashtags like #Padilla vs. Security and Our Senator Showdown trended within hours, accompanied by memes and heated debates. Commentators on cable news dissected the moment, some questioning whether Padilla had overstepped, others arguing he was unfairly silenced. The senator, holed up in his office with his team, watched the coverage with a mix of defiance and unease. His chief of staff, Maria, scrolled through her tablet, her brow furrowed. "The optics aren't great, Alex," she said, her voice low. "People are split, and the critics are loud." Padilla leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming on the desk. "I was doing my job," he insisted, though his tone betrayed a flicker of doubt. "They can't just shut me out like that." As the hours passed, Padilla's frustration grew. The viral video had turned him into a caricature, either a hero or a hothead, depending on who you asked. He felt the weight of the narrative slipping from his control, his years of service reduced to a single humiliating moment. His team urged him to issue a statement to spin the incident as a stand for principle, but Padilla had other ideas. He wanted to reclaim the conversation, to shift the focus from his ejection to his ability to lead. Late that evening, as the city's lights glittered outside his office window, he made a decision. "We need something bold," he told Maria, his eyes alight with determination. "I'm not going to let this define me." Maria hesitated, sensing the risk in his tone. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Padilla's gaze hardened. "A debate," he said. "On live television. I'll challenge someone who thinks they can outtalk me, someone the public respects. Let's show them I'm not just a soundbite." The next morning, Padilla's team huddled to strategize. They needed an opponent who would draw attention but not overshadow the senator's message. After hours of debate, one name surfaced: Senator John Kennedy, the seasoned lawmaker from Louisiana, known for his folksy charm and razor-sharp wit. Kennedy was a formidable figure, respected for his ability to distill complex issues into memorable quips, yet he carried a reputation for staying above the fray, rarely engaging in personal attacks. "He's perfect," Padilla said, a spark of confidence returning. "He's got a following, but he's not untouchable. I can take him." Maria wasn't so sure. "Kennedy's no pushover," she warned. He's got a knack for turning the tables." But Padilla was resolute. He saw the debate as his chance to prove his mettle, to show the country he was more than a viral misstep. By midday, his team had drafted a public challenge, and Padilla prepared to deliver it on a major morning news show. The studio was brightly lit, the cameras trained on Padilla, as he sat across from the host, a seasoned journalist with a knack for probing questions. The segment began with a recap of the incident, the host playing the now infamous clip of Padilla's removal. Padilla kept his composure, his jaw tight, as the host asked, "Senator, do you regret how that played out?" Padilla leaned forward, his voice steady. "I regret nothing," he said. "I was there to ask tough questions, to hold power to account. What I regret is the system that lets officials hide behind security instead of facing the public." The host nodded, sensing an opening. "Some say you crossed a line, that it was more about grandstanding than governance. How do you respond?" Padilla's eyes flashed, but he kept his tone measured. "If standing up for my constituents is grandstanding, then I'll do it every day. But let's talk about leadership, real leadership. I'm ready to prove I have it." He paused for effect, then dropped the bombshell. "I'm challenging Senator John Kennedy to a live debate right here, right now. Let's discuss what it means to serve, to be accountable. If he's got the courage, I'll see him on this stage." The studio fell silent for a split second before the host recovered, a grin spreading across her face. "That's quite a challenge, Senator." "Why, Kennedy Padilla didn't miss a beat. Because he's someone people listen to," he said. "He talks a big game about values, about doing right. Let's see if he can back it up when the spotlight's on." The segment ended with a flurry of excitement, the challenge instantly sparking a frenzy online. Within minutes, Padilla's Kennedy was trending with pundits and viewers alike, speculating on whether Kennedy would accept. Some called it a brilliant move by Padilla, a chance to reframe the narrative. Others saw it as a gamble, a high-stakes bet that could backfire spectacularly. Social media posts ranged from enthusiastic support, "Padilla's bringing the heat," to skeptical jabs, "Kennedy's gonna eat him alive." The nation was hooked, the prospect of a live showdown too tantalizing to ignore. Across the country, in a quiet office in Louisiana, Senator John Kennedy sat with a cup of coffee, his eyes fixed on a tablet streaming the morning show. His staff, a small but loyal team, gathered around, their expressions a mix of amusement and concern. Kennedy, with his signature drawl and unhurried demeanor, watched Padilla's challenge unfold without a flicker of surprise. He'd seen plenty of political theater in his career, and he recognized the move for what it was, a desperate bid for redemption. "Well, ain't that something?" he murmured, setting the tablet down. His chief aide, Tom, spoke up. "You don't have to take the bait, sir. This could be a trap." Kennedy chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Oh, it's a trap, all right," he said. "But traps work both ways." He leaned back, his mind already turning over the possibilities. Kennedy wasn't one to rush into a fight, but he also knew the value of a well-timed response. Padilla had thrown down the gauntlet, and the public was watching. Ignoring the challenge wasn't an option, not if he wanted to maintain his reputation as a straight shooter. Kennedy spent the next few hours in quiet preparation, his approach methodical but understated. He didn't call in a crisis team or rehearse talking points in front of a mirror. Instead, he sat with a legal pad, jotting down notes in his looping handwriting, cross-referencing public records and news reports about Padilla. Kennedy had a knack for finding the cracks in an opponent's armor, not through mudslinging, but through careful research and a keen understanding of human nature. As he dug deeper, he stumbled across something intriguing, a financial disclosure from Padilla's recent campaign buried in a dense FEC filing. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it raised questions about a sizable donation from an obscure nonprofit with no clear paper trail. Kennedy circled the entry, his lips pursing. "Now that's interesting," he said to himself. He didn't know if it would come up in the debate, but he filed it away, a potential ace up his sleeve. By late afternoon, Kennedy's team had secured a response. He would accept the challenge, but on his terms, a neutral stage, a single moderator, and a focus on substance over spectacle. He drafted a brief statement released through his office's social media. "Senator Padilla wants a conversation about leadership. I'm happy to oblige. Let's talk facts, not feelings, and let the American people decide who's serving them right." The statement was classic Kennedy direct, with a touch of folksy charm, and it sent the internet into overdrive. News networks scrambled to confirm the details, with CNN, Fox, and MSNBC all vying to host the event. The public's appetite for the debate was insatiable, with viewers already picking sides, some rooting for Padilla's passion, others for Kennedy's cool-headedness. Bars and community centers began advertising watch parties, and political blogs churned out predictions, each more breathless than the last. Back in Washington, Padilla watched Kennedy's response with a mix of satisfaction and unease. He'd gotten what he wanted, a high-profile stage to prove himself, but something about Kennedy's calm acceptance unnerved him. "He's too relaxed," Padilla muttered to Maria as they reviewed the statement. "He's planning something." Maria nodded, her expression grim. "That's what he does," she said. "He doesn't shout. He just waits for you to trip." Padilla waved off the concern, though a knot formed in his stomach. "Let him try," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm ready for anything." But as he prepared for the debate, running through talking points with his team, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd underestimated his opponent. The stage was set, the cameras were ready, and the nation was waiting. Padilla had started this fight, but Kennedy was coming prepared, and the clash promised to be one for the ages. The studio lights burned bright, casting a stark glow over the minimalist set. 2 chairs, a small table, and a single moderator poised between them. The air was charged, a palpable tension humming through the packed audience, and the millions tuning in from homes, bars, and community centers across the nation. The debate between Senator Alex Padilla and Senator John Kennedy had been billed as a clash of titans, a chance for Padilla to redeem his reputation and for Kennedy to prove his mettle under pressure. Social media platforms buzzed with anticipation, hashtags like #PadillaVsKennedy and #DebateNight trending as viewers posted predictions and memes. Some saw it as Padilla's moment to shine, his passion and conviction ready to dominate. Others bet on Kennedy's sly, measured style, expecting him to outmaneuver his opponent with ease. The cameras panned across the stage, capturing the electric atmosphere, As the moderator, a seasoned journalist named Claire Hansen took her place. "Good evening, America," she began, her voice steady. "Tonight, we witness a rare and unscripted conversation between two of our nation's leaders. Let's begin." Senator Alex Padilla entered first, his stride confident, his suit impeccably tailored. He flashed a tight smile to the audience, his eyes scanning the room as if to assert his presence. The crowd offered polite applause, though a few murmurs hinted at the polarized opinions surrounding him. Padilla had spent the days leading up to the debate, honing his strategy, rehearsing sharp talking points with his team. He knew the incident at the federal event had damaged his image, and he was determined to reclaim the narrative. His plan was simple: go on the offensive, paint Kennedy as out of touch, and position himself as a fearless advocate for the people. As he took his seat, he adjusted his tie, his posture radiating energy, ready to pounce. Senator John Kennedy followed his gait unhurried, almost leisurely. He wore a simple navy suit, his tie slightly askew, and his face bore the faintest hint of a smile, as if he found the whole spectacle mildly amusing. The audience's applause for him was warmer, a nod to his reputation for charm and candor. Kennedy settled into his chair, his hands folded calmly, his eyes meeting Padilla's with a quiet intensity that belied his relaxed demeanor. Claire Hansen wasted no time setting the tone with a direct question. "Senator Padilla, you issued this challenge to Senator Kennedy, citing a need to discuss leadership and accountability. Let's start with you. What do you believe this debate will prove about your ability to lead?" Padilla leaned forward, his voice firm and deliberate. "Claire, this debate is about showing the American people what real leadership looks like," he said. "It's about standing up to those who hide behind bureaucracy, who dodge the tough questions. I've spent my career fighting for communities that are too often ignored, and I'm here to prove I won't back down no matter the cost." His words drew a smattering of applause, and he pressed on, turning his gaze to Kennedy. "Senator Kennedy talks a lot about values, about doing what's right. But where is he when it's time to confront the hard truths? I'm here to hold him accountable, to show that leadership isn't about clever sound bites, it's about action." The accusation landed with a thud, and the audience stirred, sensing the fight Padilla was itching to start. Hansen turned to Kennedy, her expression neutral. "Senator Kennedy, your response." Kennedy took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving Padilla. "Well, Claire," he began, his Louisiana drawl soft but deliberate, "I reckon Senator Padilla's got a lot of passion, and that's a fine thing. But leadership ain't just about making noise, it's about making sense." A ripple of laughter passed through the audience, and Kennedy's smile widened just a fraction. "I'm here because the senator asked me to be, and I'm happy to talk about accountability. But let's be clear, accountability starts with being honest with yourself and with the folks you serve. I'm looking forward to a conversation based on facts, not just feelings." The response was understated but pointed, and Padilla's jaw tightened, sensing the subtle jab. Hansen nodded, steering the discussion forward. "Let's dive into specifics. Senator Padilla, you've criticized recent federal policies as evasive. Can you elaborate?" Padilla seized the opportunity, his voice rising with conviction. "Absolutely, Claire. Too many officials avoid scrutiny, hiding behind closed doors or security details. I saw it firsthand when I tried to ask questions at a public event and was shut down, physically removed, as if my voice didn't matter." He paused, letting the weight of the incident hang in the air. "That's not how a democracy works. Leadership means facing the public, answering the tough questions, not running from them. Senator Kennedy, you've been in Washington a long time. Why haven't you called out this kind of behavior? Or are you too comfortable with the status quo?" The accusation was a direct hit, and the audience leaned in eager for Kennedy's reply. Padilla sat back, a faint smirk playing on his lips, confident he'd set the tone. Kennedy didn't flinch. He tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question with mild curiosity. "Senator," he said, his tone almost gentle, "you're right that leadership means facing the public. But it also means respecting the rules we all agree to live by. When you showed up at that event uninvited and started raising a ruckus, you weren't just asking questions, you were disrupting a process. Now I ain't saying your heart wasn't in the right place, but there's a time and a place for everything." The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. Kennedy's calm delivery was disarming, and Padilla's smirk faded. As for calling out behavior, Kennedy continued, "I've always believed in holding folks accountable, but I do it with facts, not theatrics. Speaking of which, Senator, maybe you can help me understand something." He paused, his eyes locking onto Padilla's. "That nonprofit you got a hefty donation from last year, Bright Future Fund, I believe it's called, seems they don't have much of a footprint, no real office, no clear mission. Yet, they dropped $250,000 into your campaign. Care to shed some light on that?" The room fell silent, the air sucked out as if by a vacuum. Padilla's face froze, his hands gripping the edge of the table. The audience exchanged glances, and Hanson's eyebrows shot up, though she quickly regained her composure. "That's a serious question, Senator Padilla," she said, turning to him. "Would you like to respond?" Padilla blinked, his mind racing. He hadn't expected Kennedy to dig into his campaign finances, let alone unearth a detail he'd assumed was buried in the minutiae of FEC filings. I'm not sure what you're referring to," he stammered, his voice betraying a crack of uncertainty. "My campaign follows all regulations, and every donation is vetted. This sounds like a distraction, Claire, and I'm here to talk about real issues, not baseless insinuations." His words were defiant, but his delivery faltered, and the audience sensed it. Social media exploded with viewers posting clips of Kennedy's question and Padilla's shaky response, some calling it a gotcha moment, others demanding answers. Kennedy didn't press immediately, letting the moment breathe. He reached for a glass of water, taking a slow sip, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Padilla's visible discomfort. Hanson, sensing the shift in momentum, pressed forward. "Senator Kennedy, can you clarify what you're suggesting? Are you alleging impropriety?" Kennedy set the glass down, his expression unchanged. "I ain't alleging nothing, Claire," he said. "I'm just asking a question. The Bright Future Fund shows up in the senator's filings, but when you look 'em up, it's like chasing a ghost. No website, no IRS registration, just a P.O. box in Delaware. Now maybe there's a good explanation, and I'd love to hear it. But folks at home deserve to know who's funding their leaders, don't they?" The audience erupted in applause, the sound swelling as Kennedy leaned back, his point made without raising his voice. Padilla's face flushed, his earlier confidence evaporating. He scrambled to regain footing, his voice rising. "This is exactly the kind of deflection I expected," he shot back. "Senator Kennedy wants to dodge the real issues community needs public trust by throwing out vague accusations. My campaign is transparent, and I won't be dragged into a sideshow." But the words rang hollow, and the audience's reaction was muted, a far cry from the enthusiasm he'd sparked earlier. Hanson interjected, her tone firm. "Senator Padilla, if you have documentation to clarify this donation, would you be willing to share it publicly?" Padilla hesitated, his eyes darting to his team off stage, who looked equally rattled. "Of course," he said, forcing a smile. "We comply with all regulations, and I'm happy to provide whatever's needed. But let's focus on what matters: leadership, not paperwork." The dodge was obvious, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Kennedy, sensing the shift, didn't pile on. Instead, he pivoted, addressing the broader theme of the debate. "Claire, you asked about leadership," he said. "To me, it's about trust. Folks don't expect us to be perfect, but they expect us to be straight with them. If there's a question about where your money's coming from, you don't duck it, you answer it. That's how you build trust." The audience clapped again, and Kennedy's words resonated, their simplicity cutting through the tension. Padilla, desperate to reclaim ground, launched into a passionate defense of his record, citing his work on community programs and public safety. But his earlier stumble lingered, and the crowd's response was tepid, their attention still fixed on Kennedy's unanswered question. As the debate neared its halfway mark, Hansen called for a brief break, and the cameras cut to commercials. Padilla rose abruptly, his face a mask of frustration, and stormed backstage, his team trailing behind. "How did he know about that?" he hissed to Maria, his voice low but urgent. "We vetted everything." Maria shook her head, her expression grim. "I don't know, but we need a response fast. If you don't address it, it's all anyone will talk about." Padilla paced, his mind a whirlwind of panic and calculation. He'd walked into the debate expecting to dominate, to paint Kennedy as a relic of an outdated system. Instead, he felt exposed, caught off guard by a question he couldn't answer convincingly. The Bright Future Fund donation had seemed routine at the time, a line item approved by his campaign staff, but now it loomed like a trap he'd unwittingly stepped into. Kennedy, meanwhile, remained seated, chatting quietly with an aide who handed him a folder. He flipped through it, his expression unreadable, as makeup artists touched up his face. The audience, still buzzing from the exchange, whispered among themselves, some marveling at Kennedy's composure, others wondering if Padilla could recover. Social media continued to churn with clips of Kennedy's question, racking up millions of views, accompanied by captions like, "Kennedy just ended him," and "Padilla's got some explaining to do." The moderator's team scrambled to adjust the debate's format, sensing the need to address the donation issue without derailing the discussion entirely. Hansen, conferring with her producers, knew the second half would be pivotal for Padilla to salvage his credibility, and for Kennedy to maintain his advantage. When the broadcast resumed, Padilla returned to his seat, his demeanor noticeably subdued. He'd conferred with his team, who urged him to pivot to policy and avoid engaging on the donation question unless pressed. Kennedy, by contrast, looked as relaxed as ever, his hands folded, his eyes scanning the audience with a quiet confidence. Hansen reopened the debate with a question about public trust. But the subtext was clear. The Bright Future Fund lingered in everyone's minds. Padilla spoke first, his voice steadier, but lacking its earlier fire. "Trust is built through action," he said. "I've fought for my constituents every day, and that's what I'll keep doing." It was a safe answer, but it did little to quell the audience's curiosity. Kennedy, when asked the same question, kept his response brief. "Trust is telling the truth even when it's hard," he said. "That's all I've got to say." The simplicity of his words, paired with the weight of his earlier question, left the audience nodding their respect for him. Growing. As the debate drew to a close, Padilla made a final push, delivering a passionate plea about the need for bold leadership. But the spark was gone, his earlier stumble casting a shadow over his performance. Kennedy, in his closing statement, spoke directly to the camera, his voice warm but firm. "Folks, you don't need a senator who's perfect," he said. "You need one who's honest. I came here to talk straight, and I hope I've done that." The audience erupted in applause, and Padilla's shoulders slumped, the weight of the night settling over him. As the cameras panned out, Hansen thanked both senators, and the broadcast ended, leaving the nation to process what they'd witnessed. Padilla left the stage quickly, his team in tow, while Kennedy lingered, shaking hands with audience members, his calm demeanor intact. The debate was over, but its impact was just beginning, and America was already clamoring for answers. The studio lights dimmed and the hum of the audience faded as the broadcast ended, but the reverberations of the debate between Senator Alex Padilla and Senator John Kennedy pulsed through the nation like a heartbeat. Social media platforms were ablaze with clips of Kennedy's piercing question about the Bright Future Fund donation shared millions of times, accompanied by hashtags like #KennedyExposes and #PadillaStumbles. Commentators on late-night news shows dissected the exchange, some praising Kennedy's surgical precision, others questioning whether Padilla could recover from such a public misstep. In homes and workplaces, people gathered around screens replaying the moment Kennedy's calm drawl had silenced the room, sparking conversations that ranged from heated debates to quiet reflections. The debate had been more than a political showdown. It had tapped into a deeper hunger for accountability, a yearning for leaders who could face scrutiny without flinching. As the nation processed the night's events, the paths of the two senators diverged, each grappling with the consequences of their choices in ways that would reshape their legacies and offer a profound lesson to all who watched. For Alex Padilla, the hours after the debate were a blur of damage control and introspection. He retreated to his Washington office, a modest space, lined with photos of his constituents and mementos from his career. His team, usually a whirlwind of energy, moved with a subdued urgency, their faces etched with worry. Maria, his chief of staff, sat across from him, her tablet open to a stream of social media posts, each one a dagger to Padilla's reputation. "We need a statement," she urged, her voice steady but insistent. "The longer we stay silent, the worse this looks." Padilla stared at the desk, his hands clasped tightly, the weight of Kennedy's question still pressing on him. The Bright Future Fund donation. A detail he'd barely registered when it was approved now loomed as a fatal oversight. He'd trusted his campaign staff to vet every contribution, but Kennedy's revelation had exposed a gap in his oversight, one he couldn't dismiss as a mere distraction. "How did we miss this?" he muttered, more to himself than to Maria. She hesitated, then answered, "We didn't dig deep enough. The paperwork looked clean, but we didn't check the source beyond the surface. We can fix this, Alex, but you need to act now." Padilla's first instinct was to fight back, to issue a defiant rebuttal, accusing Kennedy of exploiting a technicality to smear him. But as he replayed the debate in his mind, he saw the audience's faces, their murmurs of doubt, the way their applause for Kennedy had drowned out his own words. He realized that denial would only deepen the public's skepticism. Instead, he made a choice that surprised even Maria. "I need to own this," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Not just for me, but for the people I serve. They deserve better." Over the next few hours, Padilla and his team drafted a statement, not a defense, but an acknowledgement. Released the following morning on his official social media accounts, it read, "During last night's debate, a question was raised about a campaign donation I received. I take full responsibility for not scrutinizing this contribution as thoroughly as I should have. My team is conducting a review, and I pledge to share the findings with the public. Leadership means admitting when you've fallen short, and I'm committed to earning back your trust." The statement was brief but candid, a rare admission in a city where deflections were the norm. The response was immediate and varied. Some praised Padilla's honesty, calling it a refreshing departure from political spin. Others remained skeptical, demanding a full investigation. News outlets ran the statement alongside clips of the debate, framing it as a pivotal moment in Padilla's career. Behind closed doors, Padilla faced another challenge, an internal review by his party's leadership, who were concerned about the donation's origins. The Bright Future Fund, as Kennedy had pointed out, had no clear registration or mission, and early inquiries suggested it might be linked to a shell entity, though no evidence of illegality surfaced. Padilla voluntarily stepped back from a high-profile community project he'd been spearheading, a decision he announced in a follow-up statement. To focus on addressing this issue, I'm pausing my role in this initiative. My priority is transparency and accountability to my constituents. The move was risky, potentially signaling weakness, but Padilla saw it as a necessary step to rebuild credibility. While Padilla navigated the fallout, John Kennedy took a different approach, one that reinforced his reputation for understated strength. He returned to Louisiana the day after the debate not to bask in victory, but to fulfill a scheduled town hall in Baton Rouge. The event, held in a community center packed with locals, was unassuming. No flashing cameras, no national press, just folding chairs and a microphone. Kennedy stood at the front, his suit jacket off his sleeves rolled up, and spoke to the crowd with the same easy candor he'd shown on the debate stage. "Folks, last night wasn't about me winning a fight." He said, his drawl warm and familiar. "It was about asking a question that needed asking. If we're gonna lead, we've got to be straight with each other no matter how tough it gets." The crowd nodded their faces, a mix of pride and respect. A woman in the back raised her hand and asked a senator, "Why didn't you go harder on him? You could have torn him apart." Kennedy chuckled, shaking his head. "Ma'am, tearing folks apart don't build nothin'. Truth does. I said what needed saying, and now it's up to him to do right." Kennedy's restraint became a talking point in itself, with commentators noting his refusal to gloat or exploit Padilla's stumble for political gain. Instead, he used the town hall to launch a broader conversation about transparency in politics, inviting local leaders and citizens to share their thoughts. He proposed a community-led initiative to educate voters on campaign finance, a practical step that resonated with his audience. "If we don't understand who's paying for the ads we see, how can we trust the folks we elect?" he asked, prompting murmurs of agreement. The event was live-streamed by a local news outlet, and clips of Kennedy's remarks spread online, earning praise for their sincerity. One post, shared thousands of times, read, "This is what leadership looks like, not shouting, just doing the work." Kennedy's team, accustomed to his low-key style, marveled at how effortlessly he'd turned a national moment into a local lesson, reinforcing his connection with his constituents. Back in Washington, Padilla's review uncovered troubling details about the Bright Future Fund. The donation, while technically legal, had come through a series of intermediaries obscuring its true source. His team traced it to a consulting firm with ties to a foreign interest group, though no direct evidence of wrongdoing emerged. The findings, while inconclusive, were enough to prompt Padilla to return the donation and issue a public apology. At a press conference, he stood alone at a podium, his face drawn but resolute. "I failed to uphold the standard of transparency I've always championed," he said. "I'm returning the funds and implementing stricter vetting processes for my campaign. I ask for your patience and your trust as I work to make this right." The apology, delivered without excuses, earned grudging respect from even his critics, though some questioned whether it was too little too late. Social media reactions ranged from supportive, "He's owning it," "That's rare," to cynical, "Damage control won't erase the debate." As weeks passed, the debate's impact rippled outward, sparking a broader conversation about accountability in politics. Community groups organized forums to discuss campaign finance reform inspired by Kennedy's town hall. Students at a California university, where Padilla had once spoken, launched a petition calling for clearer disclosure rules, citing the debate as a wake-up call. In Louisiana, a high school teacher incorporated footage of the debate into her civics class, asking students to debate the ethics of campaign donations. The lesson resonated with one student writing in an essay, "Senator Kennedy didn't just win an argument. He showed us why truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable." The debate, once a fleeting spectacle, became a touchstone for discussions about integrity, its lessons seeping into classrooms, town halls, and dinner table conversations. For Padilla, the road to redemption was steep, but not impossible. He threw himself into community work, attending local events, and listening to constituents' concerns with a humility he hadn't always shown. At a town hall in his home state, a voter asked him directly about the donation. Padilla didn't flinch. "I made a mistake," he said, meeting the man's gaze. "I'm here to earn your trust back one day at a time." The response drew cautious applause, a sign that his candor was beginning to resonate. His team noticed a shift in public sentiment, with some supporters returning drawn to his willingness to confront his error. Padilla also reached out to Kennedy, sending a private letter that, while never made public, was said to express gratitude for the debate's wake-up call. The gesture, though small, marked a turning point in Padilla's journey, a recognition that growth often comes through adversity. Kennedy, for his part, continued his work with the same steady focus, unmoved by the national spotlight. He declined most interview requests about the debate, preferring to let his actions speak. At a community center in New Orleans, he met with young leaders, sharing stories of his own mistakes and the lessons they taught him. "Nobody's perfect," he told them, his voice soft but firm. "What matters is what you do when you mess up. Own it, fix it, and keep going." The words, simple but profound, struck a chord, and the students left inspired, some vowing to hold their leaders to the same standard. Kennedy's influence grew quietly, not through grand gestures, but through moments of connection that reminded people why they trusted him. The debate's true legacy, however, lay in the lesson it imparted to the nation. It wasn't about who won or lost, but about the power of truth to cut through noise and posturing. For every viewer who watched, from the retiree in a small-town diner to the student streaming it on their phone, the debate was a reminder that leadership demands more than passion or charisma. It requires accountability even when it's painful. The story of Padilla and Kennedy became a parable of sorts, a cautionary tale about the consequences of oversight, and a testament to the strength of facing one's mistakes. Communities across the country began to demand more from their leaders, asking harder questions about funding and decisions. The lesson was clear: integrity isn't just a buzzword, it's the foundation of trust. And trust is the currency of leadership. As the nation moved forward, the debate lingered in the collective consciousness, a moment that had sparked something rare: hope. In a time of division, it showed that accountability could unite, that truth could inspire. At a community gathering in a small town, a group of neighbors, some who'd cheered for Padilla, others for Kennedy, sat together discussing what they'd learned. "It's not about picking sides," one said, her voice thoughtful. "It's about expecting better from all of them." The others nodded, and in that moment, the debate's true impact crystallized. It had done more than expose a flaw or crown a victor. It had reminded a nation that leadership begins with honesty, and that honesty, though costly, can heal and rebuild. For those who listened, the lesson was simple but transformative. Face the truth, no matter the cost, and you'll find a path to something greater.